the most common thing you're gonna see new players make a mistake around is trying to 1v1 a Thresh that's running at them. Of like, so then it's like there's this Thresh and he's coming at me real hard.
Yeah.
He's a support. I can kill him.
Yeah.
And then bada bing, bada boom.
Got
here
him.
comes the lantern.
Here comes the lantern.
And that lantern is there's never no one on the lantern. Someone's coming.
Welcome to Casuals of Runeterra, episode 3. I'm your host, Ryan, here with your other host, Hetch.
Hello, hello.
I didn't say it this time. So
Say
now,
what? Say what?
You episode 3 people don't know Hetch's real name. So what that means is you have to go back into the archive.
What do you mean? My real name is Hetch.
You have to go in the archives and find it. The deep, deep archives of the 3 episodes that exist.
Yeah.
What's up, buddy? How you been?
Yeah, I've been good. How have you been? Are the quarantine treating you all right?
Yeah, it's all right. You know, I'm going outside once in a while. I wait, don't call the police.
National Guard.
But like across the street and like doing jump rope and just I'll stand outside for a bit and just take it all in.
trying to keep your sanity and morale high.
Yeah. So the whole working from home the whole time is crazy though. It's I mean, we do from time to time being a programmer, but it's like I haven't seen my coworkers in almost, because I started quarantining a week before the official announcement. So it's been about 3 weeks.
Oh wow.
And I'm starting to forget what they look like.
Yeah, and I like the times that I had worked from home before, it was just like I like the idea of doing it constantly. I even thought back then, because that was like 3-4 years ago. And it's like I thought back then of like, if I had to do this all the time, I'd lose my mind.
Yeah, you lose your mind. Humans are social creatures, man.
So sure, my circumstances in my life may have gone to crap, but couldn't have been in a better time. So
everybody's in the crap hole now. Welcome to the darkness.
Welcome to Hetch's house.
Hetch's house. Speaking of house, let's do some housekeeping. So, as always, you can listen on SoundCloud and YouTube. Follow us on Twitter at podcastcor. And the goal is, after this episode, to get all the submissions through to iTunes, Spotify, and all the other platforms so people can have a wider range to listen to, so they can choose the one they like the most. And hopefully that goes through by the time this episode comes out. If not, it should definitely, all the platforms should be registered for by episode 4. And as always, leave a like, follow, a short review, a comment, an emoji, a picture.
Let us know you're there.
Let us know you're there.
Please.
Help. And finally, we ask you to pull one of your friends into our web by telling them about the podcast.
Oh my God. It's bad enough.
What are you
bad enough that you set the precedence already, but it's continuing.
State of the game. State of the game. What have you been playing, man?
The game. Yes. I've as far as going on the ladder, I'm still playing mostly my Katarina Lucian aggro rally deck, because there's just something so satisfying about saying, okay, I attack. All right, now I attack again, and now I attack again.
Are you dead yet?
Are you dead yet? I have been trying to make the curve a little bit higher. With a lot of, because I know you and I in private conversations have been talking about how we're seeing a lot more Vladimir. Still aggro, but more mid-range aggro popping up. So I have been trying to make my curve a little bit higher instead of just trying to do that Demacian 1-drop, 2-drop, 3-drop. But I'm an aggro player at heart. Next week, though, I will be mentioning how I'm dicking around with the Mage Seekers.
Ooh!
So I'll have a spicy list for you guys for next week.
Yeah. So I too have moved low in the mid range I kind of play around more tempo stuff, so it's still tempo-y, but I have a higher end where I'm playing Yasuo. So I like fringe characters, and Shen and Yasuo have been the two that haven't had as much play as most other characters.
Mhm.
So I wanted to look at what Yasuo looks like post Shadow Isle nerfs, right? And Mega Mogwai, hope I said that correctly, posted a list he was messing around with the other day. I took a look at it, and it's kind of your generic Yasuo list with the combination that's been devastating people, which is the Yasuo, which is a 4-drop into Intimidating Roar. Because it's a sweeper that also flips Yasuo and then gives you a board state that's so difficult to deal with. And then you build on top of that because Yasuo's kit, like the stun recall characters, have a good top end. Like their big characters are really solid, but they're not big in the way like the Freljord characters are, right? It's a different style.
Right.
They're more disruptive with a thick body, like a 6/6.
Yeah. It's definitely more of a manipulating the board state instead of just outright overrunning the board state, which is what your top end in Freljord looks like with Anivia sweep and Tryndamere overwhelm.
Yeah,
stuff.
so it's been fun because it has that controlled tempo aspect with stunning and recalling by nature. So I've been playing that and getting used to that playstyle because it is very different. Because you're not fully control, so you can't play it that way. But you do have to choose where you disrupt and where you use a stun to your advantage to attack versus using it defensively, and that's been a lot of fun to learn. So that's what I've been playing.
I'm looking at your list right now. It looks like fun. This looks like something I might want to try later on.
And speaking of that, so what we're going to start doing, listeners, is we're going to put the deck codes of the decks we talk about in the State of the Game section in the notes, so you can grab those and check them out yourself, and then you can let us know, hey, I tweaked this, try this, or this deck is trash, hetch, because that's
okay, yeah. To the listeners, if you're trying to make yourself a little bit better on ladder, make sure to look at Ryan's list. I usually do okay as far as if I have one fun thing I want to do, but it's don't come talking to me for wins.
Yeah, Hetch is fun. Ryan is no fun. That's the label.
My spare side deck today has been a Pursuit of Perfection deck. 1 win. All right, let's move on. Let's move on from my win record.
Main topic. So today we're talking about the Hunter and the Huntress. Who are they? Who are we talking about? The secret. We'll never tell. We'll never tell you. You'll never find out.
Yeah. Like, comment, and subscribe to let us know who we're talking about.
But no. So we're gonna start with the spells. Yeah. So we're talking about Thresh and Elise here. We're moving to the Shadow Isles, moving away from Demacia. And we finished with Lucian, which kind of brought us to this point to start talking about the dark side and the region that everybody loves because it's broken. They're slowly tweaking it and fixing it. But from the spell side, as far as flavor, because that's what we're about here, the card that immediately stood out was Fresh Offerings. So for Elise, the Shadow Isle stuff focuses more on the Thresh side of things, the Ladros, the Wardens, the Callista, that side of it is mainly what you're getting from Shadow Isles, with a hint of Elise and her whole shtick, if you want to call it that. And Fresh Offering is great because, this is a direct reference to Elise's lore, since the spell ends up summoning Valmaw, who is the spider god who gives her, or who plays a part in her getting her powers. And I'll talk about that later when we get to the champion section. So that's cool, right? That's a cool aspect of bringing that piece as part. It's a 2-parter, right?
Yeah, and I like that it also still combines, because even though Elise is kind of the offlier, as far as just spoopy ghosts and skeletons, she's spiders, it still ties it in as far as
that skeletons and spiders.
But I like how it still ties it in as far as there's still that theme of sacrifice. Yeah. And even though she's an outlier, she's still very much a part of that theme.
Yeah. So additional flavor, it's a 3-cost slow spell. right? So slow spell, I think that relates to the length of time that it takes and the amount of effort that Elise puts into luring her victims. Because she has two phases where when she's in the noxious region in her, dilapidated kingdom, or not kingdom, but like dilapidated house, she lures guys in there, right? But she also, because she's linked to the spider god, will take groups of guys over to the island, right? This is monotonous process, and she doesn't do it that often. It's stated that she's lived so long because she picks her moments, which creates this kind of legend about Elise and her beauty and what drives men to go seek her out, which leads to the offering that she brings to Valmont. So I think that's cool. And then the 3 cost relating to the requirement that for fresh offering, in order to play it, you have to have 3 allies die, right, in that round.
Yeah.
Which is a prerequisite, and it costs 3. Come on, that's an easy one. That's an underhand throw right there, right? But yeah, it fits perfectly into Shadow Isles. The concept of the value of cards dying, right? That's throughout the region. So this card is just dripping with flavor, and I have seen it played competitively as like a one of.
I mean, it's a really good kind of catch people by surprise card. Like the amount of value that you're getting despite the loss of 3 creatures is great. Like,
yeah,
3 mana 6/6, I'm gonna find a way to fit that in.
Yeah, and especially when you're losing those, if you lose those creatures in a valuable way, right, where you're using them to draw, or using them to get a black blade off, or you're trading, or you're chumping and getting that extra half of a card. But tell us about your spell. What you got?
So instead of going with something directly to Thresh, I always find fun as far as with the lore connection. So my spell is going to be the Ruination. 9 mana slow spell. So big old top end spell, and very simple. Kill all units. Kill everything. Followers, champions. Hopefully your opponent, and kill everything.
All's in all caps.
Yeah, all is in all caps. And as far as with this one, it's also a great lore flavor because Thresh is one of the champions in the game that was actually at the center of the Ruination, which ended up turning, because the Shadow Isles used to be known as the Blessed Isles, and they became the Shadow Isles because of a cataclysmic event that was later on referred to as the Ruination. And Thresh was one of the very first souls claimed at the Ruination. So the lore is already just like, okay, yeah, I like this. I'm down with this. But I also really just love this spell because whenever I am trying to dabble in control, I'm not going back to other card games with like Magic the Gathering. I'm not a blue player at heart as far as island pass. I'm very much more like, I want you to play your card and I want to kill it. So the Ruination is a spell that automatically just calls out to me when I want to do control, because it's the only true board wipe in Runeterra. There are definitely a lot of other spells or even like creature effects that kill multiple creatures, but nothing that just is like delete everything.
And it costs a lot.
And it costs a lot. It costs. I mean, the earliest you're getting this out is turn 6, unless you're Freljord and you've got a word stone that's stuck.
Exactly. That you're going to delete.
That you're going to delete. So, no, it's one of my favorite styles of control. Is just, let's start the board fresh.
So this takes us to followers, right? So sticking to the Elise path that I'm on, spoilers, I'm probably going to be talking about Elise later as the champion, if you haven't figured that out. Hot takes. The Hapless Aristocrat just sticks out, right? It's a very important card in general. So it's a 1 mana 1/1 that has the concept of last breath, right? So from the lore side, the whole thing was the people she lured into, like, once her transformation happened, were mainly men of lesser houses, right? So they would seek out, a queen or a wife or whatever you want to call it, to prop their house up. And you have this legend of this beautiful woman who's single, who lives in this dilapidated area of Noxus. And they would go seek her out, and she would lure. Like, she doesn't really go too far out of her way to go find them. They'll see her walking around or see her in like a forest, like that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, well, and I mean the legend is clearly kind of helping with that. If like people are
Yes.
trying to like, oh, let me see if there's any truth to this. So
Yeah,
people are
because
searching for her.
that's a good point, because remember, she's old, like she's centuries old. So like people are forgetting about her, and then the legend comes back up again, which is why she's able to maintain this whole thing. But with this card specifically, your art is a guy who's now trapped in her web trying to escape a spiderling. And what happens with the last breath is once this card dies, a spiderling is summoned, which is another cool hint of flavor there. So last breath is a death triggered keyword, which you've seen in Magic. They don't have a keyword for it. It's just when something dies. In Hearthstone, it's the death rattle keyword, if you're familiar with that. So when you die, you get a 1/1 spiderling. So from a play standpoint, a 1/1 for 1 with 2 bodies is great, right? Especially if you're playing especially when one of those bodies synergizes with the spider tribal mechanic for Elise, right? So that's 2 bodies you can use to chump block. That's 2 bodies you can play into the other death mechanics of Shadow Isles to get some value there. So it's just a great card. And one little tidbit is that in her short story, the Strand by Silk and Strand, the main character that you're following is Marcus, who's the guy who's wandering into her lair. And I think because one of the lines in that story are one of this guy's voice lines. So I think this is Marcus. Not sure. There's not 100% on that. Just kind of digging a little deep. But yeah, that's
Lady Elise.
Lady Elise.
Where are you?
All right, give us some general goodness or commanding goodness.
Commanding, yeah, general goodness. No, line up.
General Ladros.
I'm going with one of the big baddies. I'm going with one of the guys that everybody complained about until he got nerfed.
Why would you round up?
So the card I'm looking at is going to be Commander Ladros, another member of the elite party that was the first to have their faces ripped off by the Ruination. So
such a way with words.
Yeah, I'm poetic. But Commander Ladros is a 9 mana follower. That's a 9/6. So again, Andrew's sticking with the top end. And with Commander Ladros, he has Fearsome 9/6, and when you play him, you will cut the enemy Nexus health in half, rounded up. So it is half of the enemy's life total is gone, and he has Last Breath, return me to hand. So when he dies, he goes back in your hand. And
I hope whoever
again.
designed this card was immediately fired. That's how I feel. Disgusting.
So I really like the card.
It used to cost 8, by the way.
Yeah,
it's also something.
This is everything that I just read off is post nerf. All right, so he used to be even more busted than that. I still like the design of it though, because it is the ultimate clock, and the fact that it's on a follower is it's still open to every weakness that every other follower has. So you can purify it to get rid of the last breath. You can target it with anything that says target follower. So it's like, I do like the design of it, and I think it's nice to have as far as to put something as far as the top of your curve in control. But definitely I agree with you, rounded up. I can last hit someone with Commander Ladros trigger. That's some
Yeah.
That's some BM stuff right there. Like that's just the kind of thing of like if I'm dead on board and you kill me by playing Commander Ledros while I'm at 1 HP,
Yeah.
that's when I'm Alt F4ing out of the game. I'm taking a break for the day.
I'm taking a
So
break.
I
But
I hear you.
you make a good point, and I'm happy you mentioned it as a finisher or a clock because at 9 mana in a game, the game should be coming to a close. Like that's the developers have been very visible about that, is saying that these as you start to get to these higher mana costs, we want you to ending the game. We don't want it to drag on too long. Because if you do have 2 control decks, you will have, there's lifesteal, there's things like that in the game as well to keep it going. So Ladros doesn't just end it, especially if you're playing properly around it. And when they upped his cost, you did see a reduction in his play because not every deck could just splash him. You had to account for it properly.
Right.
So
And
let's
and I think it's great as far as just that it doesn't outright end the game the first time it's played.
yeah.
But it's definitely a sign of like, all right, you better think of your next turns carefully because there's only a couple left.
All
So
right, yeah.
I like that design, but it's just get rid of that rounded up. Let's just get rid of that.
Yeah.
I
Give
should
us one
not be
last
able to.
hope.
I should not be able to kill someone by playing it from hand.
Yeah.
Like, let's just fix that, and it'll be 1,000 times healthier.
So let's talk about Mr. Spoopy Souls Boy.
Spoopy Souls.
Dark Souls himself. The original Dark Souls.
The original Dark Soul. Yeah, so if you didn't know, From Software, they were the first to come up with everything I'm saying now is like this is the Bible on video games now. Welcome to the podcast. So I talking about Thresh today, and
Hey.
I obviously we're gonna make that connection because we talk about Lucian and Senna, just how cool the flavor of those cards are. Let's talk about the flavor of Thresh because I can't think, if I'm being honest, of another card in another champion in Runeterra that is translated perfectly from League of Legends to Thresh, like or to the card. Thresh has got it. Like in League, the most common thing you're gonna see new players make a mistake around is trying to 1v1 a Thresh that's running at them. So then it's like there's this Thresh and he's coming at me real hard.
Yeah.
He's a support. I can kill him.
Yeah.
And then bada bing, bada boom.
Got
here
him.
comes the lantern.
Here comes the lantern.
And that lantern is there's never no one on the lantern. Someone's coming. Like so then, and I'm sorry, I broke him.
It's so good.
But yeah, I think they did a wonderful job of like really putting that into the card game. As far as if he flips, well, to spell out the card, it's 5 mana champion for a 3/6 with challenger. And to level him up, he has to see 6 people die. But when he levels up, the first time he attacks, he is going to summon another attacking champion. So already, like, if you flip Thresh and swing with him, the value is insane. But I love the translation just from the game of League of Legends to Legends of Runeterra. They translated it so well. It feels natural. And I think that the weakest part of it is that it's a perfect support.
Yep.
Like no one's going to look at this card and go, I want to make a Thresh deck.
Yeah.
No, it's you make another deck and does Thresh fit here?
Yep.
But as far as Thresh himself, everything that we talked about in our last episode, which if you haven't checked out episode 2, shameless sellout, go listen to it because we talk a lot about the Mage Seekers, and when we're talking about Demacia, and the Mage Seekers were created to watch out for spirits like Thresh, and Thresh, even before he became a spirit, he was known as just being a very malicious human being. The
Torturer.
higher ups of the Blessed Isles, they definitely gave a nod towards his intelligence and towards his ability as far as working with ancient artifacts. So they threw him in the catacombs to let him work by himself because they were terrified of this man. Um, and he was already just so dark and twisted,
Yeah.
even in life. So then, when an invading kingdom came, he reveled in all the bloodshed. He was like, "This is my time. I can finally live in the world that I want in
The
chaos."
definition of a psychopath.
Yeah, yeah, definition of a
There'll be
psychopath.
a true crime about Thresh sooner
Yeah,
or later.
and the invading kingdom, they
Mhm.
were actually there to try to resurrect their dead queen, and they had heard tales of the waters of life, which there's so many different lores outside of
Yeah.
video games, like actual
Fountain of
real
Youth.
life
Yeah, stuff like
quests
that.
looking for the waters of life,
Yeah.
or the fountain of youth.
Yeah.
And the Blessed Isles in Runeterra is the home of the fountain of youth, or the waters of life. And Thresh was like, "Yeah, I'll take you guys there. I don't care. You guys are killing all these guys." And it actually, like, the lore actually points out that the waters are guarded, and he was just like, "Oh, well, they're guarded. I'm not going to tell y'all. You're just going to go kill them."
Yeah.
And so he lets them go and kill them. And then when they lay the corpse into the waters of life, the ruination triggers, and Thresh was noted as laughing as his soul was ripped from his body. The dude was insane to begin with. So now he spends all of his time
Wait,
ripping
wait, wait.
souls out of bodies.
Is he the Joker of
Oh yeah,
League of Legends?
100%. Like, just lore wise,
Yeah.
we Blessed Isles is DC instead of Marvel, and he's the Joker.
Yeah, Thresh definitely has, when it comes to Shadow Isles, I think that's probably the most lore we have. And it's indirect, right? Because he's always doing something, and he's always in the background, just kind of going about his business. To the Joker comparison, he doesn't really have a goal. He just likes torturing, and he likes to see despair and that cycle, and that's just what gives him life. And now that he will exist forever, that makes it that much more terrifying.
Yeah. And it is mentioned that he has fun, as far as with Lucian constantly trying to hunt him down before Senna was freed. To
Yeah.
him, that was fun.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a psychopath. And the I don't really yeah, what else can you say other than just psycho?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. And it's fun. It's a cool, I mean, obviously we like Joker because of that chaos. And he is kind of that balance to Lucian for that whole, we talked about it in the last episode. So that Thresh is a cool character. He was cool when he came out, as like you said, his abilities were cool and everything fits, and they transferred it here very well.
Yeah.
So I'm going to talk a little bit more about Elise, which, spoilers, there it is. Who would have guessed?
Man, 10 out of 10 content.
I know, right? But so Elise at the card level, she's a 2 cost, which is very low for, I think the only other 2 cost is Lucian. And then Teemo's 1. But she's a 2 cost for 2 of 3 that has Fearsome. Fearsome means if you don't have 3 or more power, you can't block. And then whenever she attacks, she summons a Spiderling. So that fits in the lore, as we talked about before. And then at the start of the round, if you have 3 or more spiders, she transitions into her other form, which grants her Challenger. And then all other spider allies also get Challenger and Fearsome, which is a huge ability, right? Because at that point, you're now coordinating your blocks all the time. You're playing Shadow Isles, which get the benefit from dying cards. So you get to choose what cards die. It's a great card, and it's early, and it's versatile. You can put it in a control deck. You can put it in, aggro deck, mid-range, and that's why I think a lot of people like her from that level.
And I love that you're pointing out the Challenger and as just how versatile it is, because we mentioned it before. Especially myself, I'm an aggressive player. The ability to choose which is going to hit your face is way too valuable. So yeah. I love Elise. Great card.
So as far as the lore side, some things that I haven't mentioned yet. So at the beginning, at one point, she was just a normal woman, an aristocrat. I don't know if you want to call her an aristocrat. She was royalty. She married a guy who she was using to build her status. So she was kind of always power hungry and ambitious from the beginning. But in Noxus culture, that's a plus. People like that. they like go-getters, right? But this led her husband to become envious of her essentially controlling their kingdom, if you want to call it that. And he poisoned her during one dinner. As she was poisoned, it disfigured her. And during that time frame, she's like, you know what? I'm going to kill this bastard because I know he has the antidote on him. Because what he wanted was for her, he said, I would give you the antidote if you can swap power to me and start telling people that I'm the reason we're so great and stop trying to suck up all the limelight. You whore. I'm assuming that wasn't in the text. I'm just assuming that was like subtext. So anyways, yeah, she kills him, takes the vial, has the cure, but she's deformed, right? At this point, she's deformed, and she runs into a pale woman, which I haven't done enough digging, I think is LeBlanc, as referred to. And I'm sure we'll talk about LeBlanc in the future because she's a cool concept of, a possible real mage who's hiding as a fake magician kind of thing, which is cool. But yeah, supposedly it's LeBlanc, and she tells her about, the Shadow Isles and that, there may be an option for you there. And if I'll give you some details, if you go get something from me. So she travels there, encounters the spider god who we've talked about, Valma, and he originally takes out the whole squad she travels with and then leaves her for last, is going to just eat her, right? Bites her. But at the same time, she has this dagger that she was going to bring back to LeBlanc, which ends up cutting her, / stabbing her. And the mixture of the two, the magic of the dagger and the bite of the spider god, trigger this thing that turns her into the least we know, which also creates a link between the two beings. So the spider god's like, that's weird. That's never happened before. But he kind of sees an opportunity here to get more people to come in. So he's like, okay, you now have this ability of eternal youth, right? She's beautiful, even though she's half spider. And our two souls are linked. So if you keep yourself beautiful, you consume, and then you bring people back to me, we can kind of feed off of each other. And that's what essentially creates what we talked about, where she goes back to Noxus for a bit, hangs out, lures a few dudes in, consumes them, or feeds them to her spiderlings. And then she'll have these excursions every once in a while where she gathers a group together, travels out, brings them in, and then brings them to the spider god, and he gets his snack as well. And it's a symbiotic relationship.
Really, she's really just Runeterra's very first Uber Eats. Like she Vialma's placing the order. She goes to Noxus, picks up his order, brings it back.
You're not wrong.
Yeah, to front door delivery. I got you. 5 stars, please.
Oh man, at least it's funny because League of Legends has a lot of, what do you want to call them? I don't want to say femme fatale because that doesn't fit. It's like I'm going to get men.
Femme fatale really is just the most accurate way to put it, but I think that it's more of just it's definitely a push of trying to put women in more of a stronger look,
like power,
overall, instead of just having a sprinkling of femme fatale into what I think like overall society views like women's positions. That's a completely different discussion.
Oh, dude, that's a can of worms we're not going to touch.
That'd be 2 episodes, but
2 episodes.
Elise definitely fits into that whole femme fatale kind of thing.
Yeah.
And she's a spider lady.
Yeah.
What more of a Widowmaker character are we going to get here? Like, how do you make this not femme fatale?
And you nailed it, because when I thought about it, the first thing that the sentence that came to mind was they took a widow who becomes a recluse.
Yeah.
And I was like, is Riot genius? Like, you literally have 2 spider references. And what at the beginning of it, she's a Black Widow because she kills her husband
and
and then
it's
becomes a
like
recluse.
it's the most natural pairing because like what else are you gonna do? Like go with like Japanese cartoons and make
Yeah.
her the Supergirl?
Yes, the
You know,
Super
like
Spider Girl.
Elise transform. Yeah, have the transformation sequence with the Japanese pop playing in the background. Like,
Thank goodness
like
they did not
come
take that
on.
option. That's probably, you know who probably pitched that option? The same guy that made Ladros. And I'm happy he's fired.
Yeah, not only is he fired, but you know I'm ecstatic that he's still paying fines like, for crimes against humanity.
Oh man. So let's get into the fate of the game, man. It's been a kind of a long one, but you know, that's a good way to start off. SI. You know, it's a cool place. It's a cool place from a lore's perspective. I still won't play it, but it's cool. Fate of the game. So the main thing that came out this week was the progress changes that Riot's talking about. And they put out this it's long. Like there's plenty of paragraphs of them essentially talking about their initial idea when this beta started versus what the changes they're going to make as they get closer to an actual release, right? And what the two things that stand out are, when I say progression changes, are how you acquire wildcards. So they'll no longer be limited. And then for vault progression, you can now get infinite vault XP during a week. So right now you could only get 4,000 and then you're done, right? But in the future, you will hit that 4,000 cap and then there'll be an additional infinite that you can get that will give you capsules, that will have more cards in them. So if you play a shit ton, right, you can still get a benefit for that play in the form of collection. And that's going to be great for new players who aren't going to start until it's actually out, right? So they can catch up. How do you feel about like those two main things, since those kind of go against what they originally pitched?
I'm not surprised at all as far as just the removal of the wild card cap.
Mhm.
I mean, I'm still very grateful that they at least started setting a precedence of being able to release a game and limiting real money purchases.
Yeah.
Like, you know, at least they could show that you would have a fan base if you limit that.
Mhm.
You know, that the people are interested in playing in an environment that's very free to play friendly.
Yeah.
But I'm not surprised that you're gonna, you know, go ahead and drop that, because if the people are willing to buy it, you should be willing to sell it.
Yeah.
That's just business
That's
101.
cool.
But I am in love with the vault changes. I'm
Okay.
in love
Same.
with it. Like if you want to go ahead and you really put in the work to grind that out, you should be rewarded for that grind. So I I'm so happy they're doing it, and I also love that they constantly follow everything up with we're watching it. You know,
Yeah.
we're watching it. We want to keep a close eye to everything that we're changing and making sure that it's as healthy to the play environment as it can be.
Mhm.
And if something needs to be changed, that we are ready to change it.
Yeah, I love that visibility as well. Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. We're on the same page when it comes to those two things. And the third thing I think is very beneficial, and you know, I mentioned Mega Mogwai for the deck that I'm currently playing. And one thing he said is that the issue with the streaming side of things, like on Twitch, was because streamers couldn't bankroll the collection and then be able to show a bunch of different decks that keep it interesting for viewers. So when a streamer has to build a deck at the same pace as people who are looking to buy the game or kind of want a wide example of why they should get into it, they can't really represent that properly. So now you won't have that problem. Because if you look at Twitch, it's not that Runeterra is a bad game at all. It's just that, you know, that startup, you have to have that commitment. So the main guys like Strife, Mega Mogwai, and Swim, like they put that initial time in, so they have the collection. So now you can see their content's getting broader, which caters more towards that. The whole purpose of a streamer, right, is to kind of give
Yeah.
you that visibility.
I mean, it's definitely a thing. Like those guys have put in a lot of work for it, and
Yeah.
I've heard a lot of streamers, like bigger streamers in other games,
Mhm.
that have just outright told their community, like for me, the one that I saw the first was Disguised Toast. which is very popular
Yes.
Hearthstone and Teamfight Tactics streamer.
Yeah. And he's a fun guy. Like he likes to play fun
Oh
decks.
yeah, and he's like, oh, I have no interest in trying to stream Runeterra because I can't buy the collection.
Yeah.
Like, how can I give you guys content?
Yeah.
And so I've heard that same thing, but
So
as far as being someone playing in it, it's like, what the price to pay? The price. What price must I pay for streaming content?
So yeah, that's the part I hope it fixes, is this, because I've seen a lot of posts, even from a lot of Magic pros, that are saying, hey, when I'm not practicing for tournaments or I'm not doing X, Y, and Z, I'm dabbling in Runeterra because they're enjoying it in their spare time. They're not streaming it, they're not talking much about it, but they're just like, yeah, I'm playing it, which is a good sign to have.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's stuff to be excited for. If you're not excited, go ahead and get excited, because I think now that they're talking about doing all those changes, that a lot of things are really going to open up. I know I'm on the edge of my seat.
Yeah, and
Hang on, let me actively get on the edge.
Let me actively get to the edge of my seat. So to end this episode, how do you say Yasuo? Because I like to say Yasuo.
I've always said Yasuo.
Yasuo. I like to leave the Y. Like I like to go straight to the A. Just Yasuo.
Okay, see, now when I do that, my brain will try to do it in Spanish.
What's the closest Spanish word?
Well, no, not like a Spanish word, just pronunciation, because the letter Y, like just by itself, is pronounced E.
Oh, okay.
And that's what Spanish speakers use to say and. So you would say beans and rice is arroz y frijoles.
Oh, okay.
So then I would go Yasuo.
Oh, I like that.
Oh my God!
All right, we'll end it on there.
I'm encouraging you. This was a mistake.
You heard it here first. You heard it here first.
No,
we're done.
No.
We're done. It's now recorded forever. All right, as usual, thanks for listening, guys, and we'll be back soon with the next episode.
Yeah, and please let us know you're there.
Please,
Send help.
Please.